Hi everyone, today we're talking about awareness and attention in second language acquisition and why these concepts are actually more important than we usually think.
Honestly, a lot of people assume that learning language is just about exposure. Like, watch Netflix and eventually English will magically enter to your brain. Another important distinction is implicit versus explicit learning.
Implicit learning is when learners absorb patterns naturally without necessarily explaining the rules, like kids learning expression through repetition.
And explicit learning is more conscious. For example, today we are learning the past tense.
But something interesting is that noticing and understanding are not the same thing. A learner might notice a pattern before fully understanding the grammar rule behind it.
Like realizing that English speakers often say went instead of goat, even before understanding irregular verbs formally.
I think this topic really changes how we see teaching, because teaching is not only giving information, it is also helping students notice important features of the language.
That's why strategies like input enhancement exist. Teachers may highlight forms, repeat structures, use gestures, or design tasks that naturally direct students' attention.
For example, instead of giving students a grammar lecture for 1 hour, a communicative activity can help them notice structure while actually using language.
And honestly, that's probably why some classroom activities feel more memorable than others.
Awareness seems to play a huge role in second language acquisition.
Noticing does not guarantee perfect learning immediately, but without noticing, learning becomes much more difficult.
And I think the main takeaway is that language learning is not passive. Learners are constantly selecting what they pay attention to.
Which means that as a teachers, one of our biggest jobs is helping students notice language in meaningful ways.
And yes, exposure matters, but research suggests that simply hearing or seeing language is not always enough. What really matters is what learners actually pay attention to.
Think about this. You can listen to the same English song for years and suddenly one day you realize, oh, that's what they were saying.
Exactly. The language was always there, but your brain didn't process it deeply until you noticed it.
That's basically the idea behind the noticing hypothesis. Learning begins when learners consciously register a specific language features.
This happens all the time in real classrooms too. For example, students may hear the third person S in English hundreds of times. She likes music, he plays soccer, but many students continue saying he likes music, she likes music.
Not because they never heard a structure, but because they never really noticed it.
One thing I found really interesting is that attention is connected to memory. The more attention we give to something, the more likely it is to enter the long-term memory.
Which makes total sense outside language learning too. Like when someone introduces themselves at a party and 5 seconds later, you already forgot their name.
But if that person becomes emotionally important to you, suddenly you remember everything about them. Their birthday, their favorite food, their dog's name, everything.
So, attention acts like a filter. Our brain are constantly receiving information, but only some things become meaningful enough to say.
The topic also talks about incidental and intentional learning.
Incidental learning is when learning happens accidentally, like learning slang from TikTok or video games without studying it directly.
And intentional learning is when learners actively focus on learning something. Honestly, I think most language learners combine both types of learning.
Yeah, because watching series in English can help a lot. But when you intentionally focus on expressions, pronunciations, or grammar patterns, progress usually becomes faster.
As future teachers, I think it is very important because sometimes students believe exposure alone is enough, but guided attention can make learning much more effective.
Thank you for watching!